Hello, I'm Carlos Peterson, and I'm addressing homelessness in America. Uh, to start addressing homelessness in America, I think we also have to address some of the perceptions about homelessness. Uh, One of the issues, particularly with it, is the viewing it as a moral failure rather than as a system failure, and truly just understanding that everyone, everyday people, can fall prey to American capitalism and the housing market in this country, and as well as the apathy of just the American system. So I think I also wanted to start by talking about the definitions of homelessness. What exactly is it, and what it is in the eyes of the American government. So, as far as like a Webster's dictionary level definition, homelessness is the state of having no home. As it pertains to, or how the U.S. government defines it, particularly in things like head counts and how they go about homelessness. So, according to the U.S. government, it's defined as when a person lacks a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence, and if they sleep in a shelter designated for temporary living, accommodations are in places not designated for human habitation. So, one of the criticisms of the government, and particularly how they address homelessness and getting headcounts, is how broad of a definition that is. There was a federal audit that even described this method as unreliable, which would mean that the ignorance of the American government is part of the reason as to why we can't get past homelessness. As far as the going about how we even count homelessness, there's sort of like the census kind of head count within each city in the U.S., and they're responsible for counting the amount of homeless people they have, and then they report it back to the federal government, and that's kind of how they accumulate it. And one of the flaws in that is that they don't account for things such as not just homelessness, but things such as like housing instability, student lives as well, which would include things such as like housing instability. So, one of the studies that was done back in 2017, or one of the flaws, particularly with that study, is that it's done in January, and it's one of the coldest days of the year, which would then, I guess, have homeless people a little bit more prone to being able to find housing during the cold weather in those times. Um, so, in 2017, there was reported around 550,000 996 people that were homeless. The reason that this is important is that the same year this was done, school districts across the country, using a broader definition of homelessness than the U.S. government, reported around 1.35 million homeless students. And the reason why this is important is because this doesn't include their parents, it doesn't include family members, and it also doesn't include just the homeless population in general. So 1.35 million homeless people, which is an incredibly large number, and something that doesn't even, according to the study, doesn't even begin to scratch the surface. Um, Now we also have the exacerbation of the housing crisis that we face, right? Because of COVID and how it's been exacerbated. There was already a housing crisis as a whole. Um, but even prior to that, about 47% of Americans that had even any remote part of savings, so that their emergency funds are gone. So money that they had for a rainy day and things like that, absolutely gone. And about 2/3 or 63% of Americans currently live paycheck to paycheck as a result of COVID. So we're seeing instability caused because of the U.S.'s lack of action towards this issue. And we're even seeing things like, if faced with a $500 emergency, around 80% of Americans wouldn't even be able to cover that. So one of the ways that we can address homelessness is just broadening or not necessarily broadening our definition, but understanding the multifaceted issue that it is, rather than just saying, okay, somebody's not in a house on a specific day of the year, therefore homelessness is not as large of an issue that it is. Thank you.